members of parliament, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, the heads of various religious organizations, President of the Crif, ladies and gentlemen. As each one of us understands here, this is my second dinner here as President of the French Republic. But the time gives us pause for thought. We think of Claude Lanzmann, what he did at the age of 18 joining the French resistance, what he gave to France, the Holocaust Memorial, which reminds us every day of the past. We think of Marceline, who passed away in September, and her work to try and carry forward the memory of genocide. Georges Linger, who passed away not too long ago, also who carried forth the story of heroism, who saved countless Jewish children during the Second World War. I think back to the time of July, where we were walking down the Rue Soufflot Street, with the red, white and blue of the French flag, saw the great French woman, Simone Veil, sent to the Pantheon, where her story, her fight for memory, her fight for women, her fight for Europe, provides inspiration for us all, even today. Could think about this 70-year relationship between France and Israel. We think back to 2018, the month of cultural interchange between our two countries. The visit of Israeli Prime Minister Rivlin. I think of René Cassin in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have only just celebrated the 70th anniversary of that Universal Declaration, and it serves as a reminder. I'm sure that we would have all wanted to have spoke about all of this, about the history of Jews in France, this great, wondrous history. But the times we are travelling through now call for a much starker reminder. For some years now, the situation has worsened, even over the past few weeks. Our country, in fact, all of Europe, and nearly all Western democracies have been faced with a rise of anti-Semitism, a rise that is unheard of since the end of the Second World War. And again, over the past few years, we have seen a rise in the number of people dying because of anti-Semitism. So we need to take stock and understand. Because the people I just mentioned, they're not just heroes, but they're martyrs who were murdered. Murdered because they were merely Jewish. Mireille Knoll, Parisian woman who survived the roundup that occurred in the Second World War, lost her life only recently. Sarah Slimy, mother of three, who was thrown out of her window in her apartment. Ilan Halimi, a young man, only roughly 20 years of age, was beaten and murdered. And the victims of the hyper-caché back in 2015, Philippe Brahim, Johan Cohen, Yoav Attab, François-Michel Saada, the Zaratora school children who were murdered, Jonathan Sandler and his sons, Ariel and Gabriel, and young Miriam, also shot at point-blank range, lest we forget them. The dark clouds of the 20th century saw that anti-Semitism was still on the horizon, and that the dawn of the 21st century just serves as a reminder that the past is still dark and still ever present. And those dark clouds are back again. the son of a Polish man deported, moved to France and learned French to the point where he could become a member of one of France's highest language institutions, lived to see the day where Juden, German word written on bakeries, to see countless swastikas painted around the nation, Jewish cemeteries being desecrated. For that person to live to see such a day, for representatives of various religious organizations, for them to be insulted, to be threatened, Sergio Almergui, Ariel Goldman, Philippe Val, Manemonge, to be faced with such nihilism, such violence, to see a complete abandonment of all that is sacred, where people take up arms against churches, against elected officials. Unfortunately, this list could go on for much longer. But this is not to forget what all of those people who suffer day in, day out, but never once mention it. Faced with this, can we say that we have done nothing? We have seen a number of people sentenced. We have adopted new action plans for years and years. Sometimes we have even put through legislation. But all that we have done has been for naught. We have been ineffective. If we're here today, it is for that very reason. This long list of reasons. It is a long list of failures. Far too many words. Far too much indignation, but not enough results and action. And the time is now for us to act. Decisive, concrete action. Because I don't want to become used to hearing such words and such indignation. What is worse than a perverse mind is a mind that has become used to the status quo, and we cannot let ourselves become such. We have to put a name on evil. We see that anti-Semitism is hiding itself behind the mask of anti-Zionism. At the 75th anniversary of the Vel d'Hiver roundup, anti-Semitism is a modern, anti-Zionism is a modern form of anti-Semitism. It is therefore why I can say today that France, as we took upon ourselves with its European partners back in December, to implement the definition of anti-Semitism as laid down by the IHRA. It is not about modifying the criminal code here in France. And it is not up to us to come back on topics that we've covered over in the past. The issues of international politics, and everyone knows France's position on international relations. In fact, last year there was a great debate on that. Here, what we have to do is we have to be clear and give clear powers to our teachers, to our magistrates, to our police forces, so that they can better fight against that which is hiding behind the rejection, the negation of Israel. Hatred against Jews is first on the follow line. In the same vein, we will not lay complacent. In light of boycotting calls, we have heard countless calls to boycott, and we will not lay complacent. We need to look at reality front on. Remove all forms of filter. Unfortunately, there is long-standing anti-Semitism And with that comes a form of anti-Semitism founded in radical Islamism. Yes, such ideology is a scourge of some of our neighborhoods, some of our areas in Paris and France. We need to win back these areas of France by creating police outposts, by creating outreach programs, by bringing all services of the public sector, national education, all public servants, all civil servants, and by utilizing them methodically in a plan to fight against anti-Semitism. And we will not stand down. We need to move forward step by step. And we need to fight against those people who would try and break down French society by creating stigmatisms within French society. But no, the French Republic protects all citizens, all beliefs, all forms of expression. And France cannot accept, in any case, that on behalf of a religion or on behalf of a philosophy, that the worst be committed. Because that goes against the French Republic. Because in France, we have freedoms. We need to hunt down and punish those people who are to be found guilty of anti-Semitic acts. Because nothing is more unbearable for the victims of such crimes than to see the perpetrators go untried. We need to fight against those people who undermine the authority of the government. And I know that of all of those people who are victims of anti-Semitic crime, then they need to say so as soon as possible so that their crimes can be taken into account. We need to ensure that our police forces are sufficiently trained and prepared so that they can act as front-line members of this fight against anti-Semitism. And on that, we have become complacent with unclear practices, with official complaints that were not taken seriously enough. But now, the law has been made clear and simple, and therefore that needs to translate into acts. We cannot let any form of commonplace practice or any habits remain. We have specialized teams within the gendarmerie and within the French police to ensure that they can continue what was started in Aix-en-Provence in partnership with the Camp 2000. Mr. President, you spoke of anti-Semitism. You spoke of anti-Semitism in the online world. You said it was virtual anti-Semitism. But there is nothing virtual about it. It is very real anti-Semitism. These people think that they are free of all laws. But unfortunately, that hatred and that anti-Semitism, which is online, then feeds down into the streets of France. 2 French people out of 5 believe what they read on social networks, and they are likely to believe in conspiracy theories. So we need to fight that with a clear, hard line. We started working with major online platforms like Facebook. Facebook chose France to be the beneficiary of a €1 million fund to fight against hatred. And within that work group, we have regulators to better outline that work. Last year, I said here, in this very forum, that I want to carry forward a European-wide policy, and work has already been done in that vein. You spoke about it in your own introductory speech. The EU reports that call on us to bring forward concrete measures. And the European-level fight needs to continue, but unfortunately it is too long and we can no longer wait for it to make headway. Therefore, as of May, at the earliest parliamentary session possible, we will bring forward a bill to fight against hatred on the internet. And we will try and implement all of the propositions out of that EU report. On that, we need to look at what our German counterparts have been able to do in a very effective and practical way. They brought in sanctions, both criminal sanctions and financial sanctions. They called on individual responsibility. We have to tackle foreign websites that have activities on French soil and that undermine our efforts in France. Far too often, cowards hide behind a pseudonym, behind a nickname on internet, behind an alias. But behind each alias, behind each pseudonym, there is a real person. And I think we can get to those people. And unfortunately, when we think of that, we can only think of the worst. And there are things that we cannot accept. Just because people are anonymous, unfortunately, the content that those anonymous people leave on the internet is left behind. Even today, there are platforms like Twitter, where we can see some perfect examples, where sometimes we wait weeks, if not months, for such hate speech to be taken down. People who call upon hatred, who call upon people to be murdered, it takes them weeks, if not months, to take such content down. And what our bill will do, will bring forward clear guidelines for all hate speech and all hatred online will be taken down in as fast time as possible. And we will call on the responsibility, a legal responsibility, of those platforms that carry forward, that serve as vectors for such hate speech. We have to bring sanctions on the digital world. We have to put the means for that to happen. We have to not only bring to justice those people who are on social networks touting hatred, touting anti-Semitism. We need the list of those people who are sentenced for such crimes to be made public. Because there is too much shame. There's so much shame that should no longer be put on the shoulders of the victims, but be put on the assailants, on the perpetrators of such hate crimes. France also needs to lay down a number of red lines that cannot be transgressed. We need to change current laws. This is why I've asked on the Minister of Interior to initiate proceedings to dissolve and to break down any organization, any grassroots organization or association that serves as a vector for hate speech. There are a number that I can already quote, and they need to be disbanded. To put a name on hatred, we need to punish hate crime. But on top of that, we need to educate. We should never lose sight of the long-haul goals of educating people, of ensuring that what we are living through today in our countries, in our societies, does not happen in the future, because it says a lot about where we are now, about what we have let happen over the past, what we no longer wanted to put a name on in the past, and therefore what we forgot is coming back to haunt us. Because history shows us that there is no true antidote against hatred. Ignorance, especially, fuels hatred. Our teachers, primary and secondary education, are a fantastic example of how we can teach about the Holocaust. And they bring forward admirable examples of how we can learn about the memorial of the Holocaust. The Minister for National Education has said that the ministry will do as much as possible to remove any form of ambiguity that has existed in the past, to train teachers more, to be more demanding of them. And in that vein, the French government will provide further support to the National Holocaust Memorial. The DILCRA currently provides financial assistance, but the Prime Minister in the next few weeks will increase the allocated budget and financial assistance. The teachers that I was speaking of are far too often left up their own devices when they are sent out to teach in these suburbs where radicalization is rife, where education is no longer possible. These teachers of secondary and primary high school will always have the French Republic on their side to support them. Within the National Education Ministry, a specialized team will be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to ensure that our teachers can be supported. So that if ever there is a problem in the classroom, they can talk about it and they can report it. Unfortunately, in far too many instances, over the past few years, we have seen children leaving the public education system. And they have been taken out of these institutions and put into private education systems. And why is this? Because far too often the children or the students or even the parents were too afraid to speak out. This is why I've called on the Minister to put in place a specific program where we carry out an audit of all students in all schools, with a key focus on those students in Jewish schools. Because when we see children being taken out of these schools, it is a clear reminder of the fact that we have forgotten sight of the real issue. And we've been afraid of speaking out. The school needs to remain a bastion against hatred. It needs to be a bastion against that which has fueled this form of absolute relativism, denial of historiography, denial of scientific reasoning, of logic. And unfortunately, we have lost the taste of humanism. And we need to bring that back to the heart of our education. Unfortunately, in the past, it is something that has been forgotten. But at the heart of our education, we need to give our teachers and our students the means to fight against what has taken root in our society. The desire for immediate satisfaction and gratification, relativism. We need to give people the tools to fight against that. So not only do we need to act, but we also need to be held accountable. And that is why I'm here today, because anti-Semitism is not just a problem for the Jewish population, it's a problem for the French Republic. Those who think that anti-Semitism is only a matter for a few, for a small community within the French Republic, that is to forget our history, our shared history. Anti-Semitism is quite simply hatred of the other. And it takes on many forms, many shapes. Because hating the Jew is just like hating the communist or the capitalist. Hatred towards external powers or the enemy within. It is all the same hatred. Because anti-Semitism has taken on many faces, many extremes. But really, it is just the hatred of one face, the face of the other. Anti-Semitism is a problem for the French Republic, because it is just the frontline form of this hatred. But it just covers the other hatreds that hide behind this one forefront hatred. Hatred towards Muslims, racism in all forms, LGBT hate crime. All forms of hatred arise and are built up. Hatred against parliamentarians, against the official powers, against churches. And for all of these reasons, anti-Semitism is a matter for the French Republic, for the French nation. Because when we look at the past, I get the feeling that there are things that we don't want to see. When we look at the long list of great people who created our country, Simone Weil, Proust, Robert Badinter, France owes so much to those people who step by step built our nation, who gave our nation its current face. But unfortunately, far too many of our fellow citizens see that for the past countless centuries, there have also been great Jewish political commentators, Jewish authors, people who also built this French nation. Some of the greatest commentators on the Bible, on the Talmud, came from France. Samuel ben Salmon, Samson ben Isaac from Chinon, Moïse d'Evreux, Moïse from Coucy, Isaac ben Samuel from Dampierre, Sanson from Sens, Jacob from Pont-de-Mer, Matatadia from Avalon, Salomon from Château-Landon, Meshulam from Melun, Isaiah ben Salmel from Metz, Joseph ben Talman from Limoges, Ayem ben Isaac from La Rochelle, Menayem ben Salomon Mary from Perpignan, Jacob ben Mapir, Aaron ben Paris from Avignon, Abraham ben David from Narbonne. All of these people are known around the world. They're known around the world because they clearly said that there was something from the Bible, because they added something to universal knowledge, and they came from these towns and cities around France. They make up France. So I want to hear you say, we are here, this is our home. Because it is, and you can do so by looking at our history, at our past. The history of France is a great, beautiful history, one of cross cultures, of Jews coming from across the world, who've come to France and learnt to love France, and have been able to make France great. I can think of all of those French men and women who learnt to love and carry their religion freely because they could do so freely in our country. Because the history of Jews and France, even before the French Republic was even created, even before we started speaking of France, that is where we are from. We are in our own home. We are all in our own home. Yesterday, at Kotzenheim, I felt a great shame. I was there with the inhabitants of a small Alsatian town, and they too felt shame. We looked at the desecrated graves in front of us, and we said what they really want is to ensure that no one can rest in peace. That's what they are looking for. And after shame, we feel rage, because we always want to come up with an instantaneous answer by replacing one hatred with another. But deep down, and I told the people of that town, I said, we will fix these grave sites. But really, those people who perpetrated these heinous crimes, they aren't France. They don't represent France. The tombs of Jewish, French people stand strong, just like the trees that are planted for them as well. Like a great oak tree, they have dug their roots deep. And those roots make up our nation. So yes, in times like these, there is something awful that we have to deal with. Barbarianism brings with it an immediate impact. It shocks people. It terrifies people. It causes great reactions with people. In some cases, it overwhelms people. Barbarianism has a much stronger power than just intelligent thought and reasoning. And it is that strength, that power, that these people are looking for. So this is a fight that we will not win in a day. But I want to tell you all here tonight that we will never take this as the status quo. We will never become complacent. We have to fight for truth, freedom, fraternity, and intelligence. That is the only way of tackling such barbarianism. We have to remain courageous. That is the mission which unbecomes us. Sometimes the work we will do is much slower. It takes place in the shadows. But what we do, we don't do it for naught. We do it for a great goal. Ladies and gentlemen, last Friday, I was sitting in my office, and the mother of Ilan Halimi was there. And she was looking at a painting by Pierre Soulages. And I said to her, that is what we have to live through. Some people thought that you can't paint with black. But along came a great mind, a genius, and said, in working time and time again, tirelessly, the color black, by using a scalpel, by using a palette knife, by creating shape and texture, I can turn darkness and create sunlight. And then all of a sudden, the painting we were looking at became full of life. It was no longer black. It was beyond black. We cannot get rid of the evil within our society through laws, speeches, or just actions. We need to be together, united. We need to fight for this outer black, this beyond black. We need to be the fighters of untireless courage. We need to fight for shared intelligence. And we need to bring that to the darkest black within our society. And we will do so untirelessly. And ultimately, we will win. Long live France, long live the Republic.